Hey Luna, are you proud of your Black heritage?
Hi, this is Camber.
Hi, this is Nakisha, and you're listening to Wise and Weird.
Yeah, February. And at the time of this, us recording, there's even a lot going on. We had our Leo full moon last night, and I did a ritual. Were you feeling it?
It was, I think I was, but I had also I was awake for 40 hours. So it wasn't, because had flights and stuff to get home. So it was just kind of crazy. So it was like confusing what I was feeling. But I did wake up and I journaled for like 3 hours this morning about like life goals, and like had this weird vision of like wanting to have like 3 kids, which was the first time I've ever thought that in my life. It was so weird. Anyway,
wow.
I don't know if that has anything to do with a Leo full moon, or I'm just in a really weird place personally.
I mean, Leos are the family fire sign. So, I mean, they are about family. And this full moon was a lot about fertility because it has a lot of influence. Not only was it the Leo full moon, but it had influence from Mars and Venus as well, was like supporting this full moon. So it was really big around fertility as well. So triplets?
Triplets. I might start crying on our podcast.
I know. Well, you can join me with our 3 kids we're apparently going to have, because from that psychic, we'll see. Yeah. I don't know. That'd be crazy. But yeah, she said 2 boys. So we'll see, because I'm not going to be pregnant 3 different times. So I'm pretty convinced that we're having twin boys next.
I'm not doing it 3 times.
I'm not. So, but I guess we could always adopt and stuff like that too. But so I don't know. I've always been curious about that. We'll see what happens. But yeah, fertility around this full moon, so could
exciting.
Be and then I've got a Leo moon, that's my moon sign, so I feel like I was definitely feeling it, but in a really positive way, kind of in like an energizing, feeling confident and bold type of way, just wanting to show up as my authentic self and just like stomp through with my thick thighs. And so yeah, it was a pretty good energy for sure. So yeah, full moon going on right now as we speak in Leo. Also tomorrow / the 19th, the sun enters Pisces. So we've got our Pisces season starting.
Woo! Yay.
Yeah, that will be fun. I like Pisces season. Usually a pretty deep, reflective time. Pisces is the end of all the signs. So it's kind of like tying up loose ends in a way. People might pop back up, which is so funny because someone popped up recently. But yeah, people may pop back up, or certain projects or ideas, or, incompleted tasks or whatever that you had before that you're really needing to kind of finish up to move forward. Pisces is like all about that. Completing, it's an end or completion of a cycle so that we can, then move forward and start again with Aries, who's the first. So yeah, it's usually a pretty good time. I know you've got a lot of Pisces in your life that you share special connections with. So that's really exciting.
Celebrate the Pisces. They love it.
That. Oh yeah, they do. I'm like, yeah, they do. But so March 2nd, we have a new moon in Pisces. So that will be really cool energy. I love new moons. A lot of people just celebrate, full moon. When I started getting into the moon cycles, I even celebrate like quarter moons or pay attention to quarter moons a lot even now too. But mostly, it's the full moons and the new moons are really good energy for setting goals and setting your intentions. So March 2nd, we'll have a new moon in Pisces, which, like I was saying, Pisces is the last of the signs, right? They're also really dreamy. They're a very dreamy sign. Sometimes, and that usually is a big benefit, but then sometimes it can be almost too much to where they really need grounding in their life. They need kind of more grounding. That's usually why Pisces and Taurus usually vibe pretty well with that, actually. Taurus is normally very grounding for Pisces. But then Pisces is very like dreamy for Taurus, but or any of the earth signs would be grounding for them. But so new moon in Pisces, I put, what are your wildest dreams? Time to imagine your future. So it's kind of those big goals that we think are like too far away, maybe the 5-year plan, 10-year plan that we think are just so big and out there. That's kind of where Pisces is. That's what Pisces is all about. They're out here up in the clouds, not really down here. So it is a really good time to like bring in those energies and play with it a little, get really creative, get dreamy with your ideas, write things down, start, moving towards, maybe take baby steps, write down like the next step towards that big dream or big goal of yours. Because a lot of times we can kind of freeze if it's like too big or too overwhelming, and we'll just kind of freeze and not go for it. So this will be a good time to actually like make a move towards that and have it be like a supportive time for you to do so. It can also be about cutting off the past to move forward, like I was saying before, especially with new moon vibes. New moon is all about new beginnings, a new start, a new project, a new goal, whatever. It's a newness to it. So yeah, you really want to cut off the past, anything that's kind of holding you from moving forward. It normally represents a new cycle, new time, a new phase. Also, Pisces energy is very nurturing and gentle. They're very reflective, and they're really good at getting into the mode of receiving. They normally can, they're very fluid. And so that really helps them to be able to get into receiving mode, where a lot of us others, especially my stubborn ass, like have to try so hard. And then in that trying, you're like not receiving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're just
Not
like
in
always,
flow.
you're always like going up against the flow of the river or whatever. That's how I feel all the time. I'm always going up against the like actual flow of things. So, but Pisces is very good about, just getting on their back and floating down the stream and seeing where it takes them. So yeah, really good time for all of that. So you'll probably feel those energies around the new moon, which is March 2nd. And then March 6th, which we have a good friend with that birthday. So on March 6th, both Mars and Venus enter Aquarius. So that will be really cool energies. So Mars and Venus themselves are a pretty sexy energy. Mars is your energy. It's your life force. It's also your sex drive. Like if I'm looking at like couples charts and seeing how they match up, like sexually, physically, intimately, I look at their Mars signs a lot as well. So yeah, Mars being paired up with Venus, which is the planet of love. It's the planet of fertility, love, beauty, sensuality. Then you can see how combining those together would be very, sexy type of energy. With it being in the sign of Aquarius, that's a really interesting blend, because Aquarius is more focused on the whole. They're more focused on the group, multiple people, the whole community. more so than like one-on-one relationships. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And right while I was like writing down my notes on this and stuff, I was totally inappropriate, like orgy. But you know, I mean, if that's, you know, what you choose to do, then a great time for that. Very supportive energies around that. But yeah, involving like innovation, invention. So yeah, like a new sex position. Or it could be something, a more efficient way of a work procedure that you bring to the table, that you know, suggest in a meeting or something like that. But it's going to be newness, and it's going, because Aquarius is all about new. They're kind of like that new moon energy. They're very much about new, it being innovative and effective for the whole, and like about systems working for the whole, the group, community, others. So yeah, really good way to show off your like inventions during that time, or any new like suggestions. It's a very forward moving energy. With Mars is a very forward moving energy. It's a masculine energy. It's our drive. So with Mars being in Aquarius, which is already a very forward moving sign, then that's like even more of a push forward. Yeah, very inspiring time. And then Venus is very much about friendship, and so is Aquarius. So with this, with Venus entering Aquarius, this influence is going to be, yeah, around friendships, peace and love for the whole or the collective, community, freedom, connection. So that will be really awesome as well. There's some protests going on right now, and things like that going on around the world. But with this kind of energy, it would be in like a more peaceful, like loving type of way. That's kind of what I think of when I think of that type of energy. But there can be so many different things that represent that or encompass that.
Sure.
But those are some of the major astrology themes going on in the near future.
Yay.
Yay! How'd you feel about that?
I feel like this one was a very positive, like, forecast. I feel like I'm gonna cough real fast.
Oh, no. Yeah, I feel like it is too. I feel like we're moving into more positive energies, at least for a little while. I would like to say for a long time. I hope so. But from what I've seen, heard about, read about, gathered, April is supposed to be a really good month as well. Like April is supposed to be some really good energy. So I feel like going into March, it's like building up to that. So yeah, I feel like there's some good energies at play here, and it will kind of be happening more and more. Well, I hope. We need it. I need it.
I'm just waiting for one of your epic transitions.
I don't have one. I just realized I'm like, I should be transitioning right now, and I don't know what to say.
Then I put you on the spot.
I know. It's February, Black History Month.
Yeah.
There was like an echo when I said that. Yeah, Black History Month. So we're gonna celebrate.
I know, we decided that we couldn't go all of February without talking about Black History Month.
Yeah. I think it's really cool to celebrate it during this time and have an episode during this time. I mean, like you were saying though too, you're like, Black History Month can be any time. It doesn't need to be limited to February, you know. Or like for us, for our podcast or our episode, or us talking about it, I mean, we can bring awareness at any time. So I did like when you said that. But yeah, I'm glad that we're doing this before February ends. It'll be nice.
I think it's good to do it. I mean, it's good to do it now, like people are paying more attention to that stuff, so like maybe it'll reach more people. But yeah, like Black
Yeah.
history is important every month, you know. So I know we talked about this last time, like where did it come from and like why is it the worst month ever? And I know why
Yeah.
now.
Okay, because what I found was that it had to do with the birthdays of like Abraham Lincoln and someone else. Was that what you found, or did you find something else?
Nope, that's what I found.
Yeah, and
I
when
was
I
like,
saw
so
it,
you can say it.
I was like, well, I don't remember who the other person was,
Oh,
but it had
Frederick
to.
Douglass.
Oh yes, okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I was like, that's why. Okay, because I don't know. I feel like years and years ago, I remember hearing about why February was selected. In my mind, I was just always like, yeah, because it's the shortest month. But that's, that's just me being me. But yeah, when I looked that up, I realized that it was because of the birthdays and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, what else
Yeah.
did you find on that?
So, because just Frederick Douglass died in 1895, and then he was born a slave. He got himself free, and then he was a big part of like the emancipation of slavery. And so then he obviously, because he was born into slavery, he didn't know his exact birthday, but they thought it might be February 14th. And then 2 years after he died, Black schools, colored schools, decided that they were going to celebrate him on February 14th and have Frederick Douglass Day. And then in 1926, so quite a ways, like 30 years later, they decided to make Black History Week. And then it wasn't until 1970 that there was actually Black History Month. So it was in 1970.
Wow.
So yeah, like 73 years after they decided to do an entire Black History Month. So yeah, that was really interesting. And I didn't know that. And it was the same thing like that you said, like they came up with that particular month, but it all started with just Frederick Douglass Day. And then it went to week. And then they decided to make the whole month because of Lincoln. Which of course there's a lot you could say about Lincoln too. But so we like just to stick to Frederick Douglass, clearly.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I feel like there's so much that I don't know still, and I feel like I have a duty to learn. I also feel like I wasn't taught very much in school, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially growing up in Utah. History class was a little different when I was in Maryland, to be honest.
Sure.
But in Utah, I did notice a difference between in Utah and in Maryland, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I feel like I'm just now or just recently starting to really learn about Black history, which is kind of a hard pill to swallow. I wish I had more of that knowledge when I was younger or growing up. I wish I had more of a connection to it when I was younger growing up. I really didn't have much of a connection to like my Black side or my Black ancestors until kind of more recently. But yeah, I still feel like I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and I think that can be really hard because I've watched so many people like invalidate Black people's experience because it's like, oh, if you don't know the history, like clearly like you whatever aren't someone who can speak on this issue, so like racism must not be real. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and I think that it's unfair because you weren't taught it. You know what I mean? You grew up in the same schools that I did, and not the exact ones I did, but like they taught the same things to you as they did to me. And it's just sad because it's like then it's used later for like invalidation.
Oh, it totally is. And it's totally unfair because a lot of records have been wiped out. A lot of history has been rewritten. A lot of Black history, a lot of Native American history. Yeah, a lot of other cultures, like their histories have been completely, wiped out. And then it's like, oh, well, that's, you obviously don't know about this and this. And it's really hard. Yeah, it's such a disservice because now that we're older, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of African American people that I feel like that don't know a whole lot about their own history. They kind of feel the same as I do, and I've been just learning it kind of recently. And learning more about that history, it's been a really difficult process to go through because there's so much stuff to process. There's so much trauma, there's so much healing as well, but there's a lot of trauma around that. And just the things that, my ancestors went through, and it's not even like it was that long ago. That's another thing too, that gets thrown in our faces and stuff, but it really wasn't even that long ago. When I was reading an article about the first Black girl to go to public school. Oh, what was her name? But I remember she's still alive. I remember like seeing her picture and reading the article, and I'm like, that wasn't that long ago. That is so crazy. And this poor little girl, she got teased and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's just, oh, I have chills talking about it. But yeah, it's just, it's so crazy. But a lot of people who, their parents or grandparents or whatever grew up in times of slavery, a lot of them didn't know their birthdays. And even with my spouse's grandpa, so with Tor, his granddad, like for the longest time, didn't know his birthday either. He couldn't find the records or whatever. I think eventually he did, but it's just kind of funny because the family has always like celebrated like 2 different birthdays for him. But I think they did finally find like the real one. But yeah, I mean, when you think about that, that doesn't go very far back into history at all.
Well, they manipulate it too, because I know like a lot of the pictures from like the 60s or 50s, 60s, 70s, when we had color pictures, they very intentionally made them black and white in news and media to make it look significantly older than it actually is, so that you disassociate that from like current times.
Yep. You're like, oh, that happened a long time ago. Yep. Yeah.
Or just like little tricks like that. That's like one I can think of, but it's crazy for sure. Very manipulative.
It is. Yeah. So it's hard. I feel like it's really important that that we learn about it. But when you start learning about what actually happened, there's some things there that it's really hard. It's really hard to digest and stuff, but there is so much to be celebrated. And when I think of what Black communities, Black people, Black ancestors have been through, it's the Black woman especially, they're so powerful to me. Like they just embody, I love seeing like artwork of Black women. I don't know, I just get such a like, they're just such a whole like vibe, and I love it. But and I've been feeling really connected to that, I've been feeling really connected to my Black women ancestors. I feel like lately, I feel like I may have a guide that is that's one of my ancestors from a long time ago. But yeah, she's just this beautiful, and she's got these like braids and wears this like gold, kind of like a gold cuff on her arm, and very feminine and strong. I love that mix. And that's what I think of when I think of like Black women. They're so strong and nurturing they've had to be, they've gone through all kinds of things, taking care of their people. And yeah, I think it's really beautiful and should definitely be celebrated.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think too, just like the idea of how we were raised, I think about like Africa specifically and like my ideas as a child, thinking like, oh, it's like this third world country and it's like this terrible place. Who would ever want to live there? Like these are the things that they would tell you. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the accounts on Instagram I follow is the and I'm probably going to say this wrong too, but it's the Hamamat Foundation, and it's this woman who lives in Ghana, and she like promotes. It's a nonprofit foundation for women there. She wants to bring jobs to Ghana, and she like just shines this whole light on how like people don't want to leave. Like it's their home and it's beautiful. And she shines this whole other perspective on just like what it actually is like to live there and how they're happy and they're not living these like third world country. Like, I'm not saying that like there aren't places that are obviously struggling, but she wants to revive it, not colonize it, not
Yes.
change it, is what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get to. And so it's like we think that here in like America, you go and you make it better by making it like you.
Yeah.
And so I love this account, and I'll put it in the notes too, because like it's really, you just don't see much of it. Like you don't see like thriving villages in Africa that like where there's 1,000 women working on this like huge business that they've done. And like they talk about like how they're want to make sustainable stuff for like shea butter and like um eco-friendly and all of this stuff, so that because Africa is like the richest resourced continent in the world, and the
Mm-hmm.
entire world would just like, if they closed the border to all of us, we would, everywhere would just probably fail without it. And it's like that's something we don't want, like, and that's just the land, but the people are amazing too. So I know that's a really awesome account that I really love following, because I don't think we get that visualization enough.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Growing up, especially growing up in Utah, but growing up in the US, I think in general, like, yeah, you're right. We see these images when we hear about it and stuff. To me, Africa was so different. First of all, we treat Africa like a country, not a continent.
Yeah.
But like Africa to me was so so different than how I see it now. Like growing up, I didn't understand a lot of, I didn't understand much about it. I didn't know much about it. I just wasn't really educated, and it's just so weird to miss an entire continent. Tor and I were actually talking about this. There was a few years back, this office that I was working for, our Christmas party, like our Christmas event or whatever, was that we were going to this play. It was called Around the World. And we were going to this play. It was done, I think, up at the U of U or something. Yeah, I think it was up at the college. But and we went to go see the show, and it was really cool. They had a bunch of different cultures and their dances, and they had it was dance and music from like all of these places, right? It's called Around the World.
Yeah.
Well, they completely skipped Africa. An entire continent
Yeah.
they completely skipped. And Tor and I were just like, what? Which, first of all, we were probably the only two Black people in the entire audience as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this time, this play, they were like so excited about it because they had a lot of students that were able to do, that were able to represent China and Thailand, I believe. So I guess before this year, they didn't even have like a lot of Asia either. Which I didn't know. But, as we were leaving, just everyone was just like, wow, that was amazing. Oh, that was so good. Like people could not stop talking about it. They were just freaking out about it. And we're listening to all these comments and stuff. And Tor and I are kind of just sitting there like, do they realize they completely left out, like such a prominent, like when I think of Africa, like I think of music and dancing and celebration, and there's so much culture and history. And I mean, some would even argue that our entire history comes from there. So like that was just really, that was so surprising to me. Well, not super surprising, I guess. It was Utah, but like, you know,
Disappointing.
it was, yeah, it was disappointing. I was just like, yeah, that wasn't quite around the world, but you know, good try. I don't know, like cool. But so yeah, I'm reminded of that. I remember that happening, and that was kind of crazy. But I feel like, especially where we grew up, um it's it's so hard. There's such an naivety there, and um microaggressions. That's what I think of. Like, it's not just like outwardly racist most of the time. They're not just like outwardly racist, like, oh, I don't, you know, I don't like Black people, or like you people, or what. It's not really like that, but it's microaggressions. Oh my God, your hair. Can I touch? Like, they'll just come up and just touch your hair, or, you know, like talk about, like joke about your seasonings or whatever. I don't know. I would always get made fun of in school, you know, like, oh, Nakisha, she's not even Black. Even my mom says that. Even I found out recently that my mom says that about me. Oh, Nakisha, she's not even Black. She doesn't talk Black. She doesn't, you know, and it's like, what is that? What does that even mean? Like, you know, that's not for you to say, like, what, you know, who gets to come up with like what percentage of Blackness I am, or how Black I am, or whatever. But I got that a lot growing up, and it really bothered me. It got to the point though where I was so used to it and just kind of like laughed off, like, oh, haha. But now I'm a male, that I've been like learning more about it now that I have, you know, a Black daughter, I have a Black husband, I have a whole Black family. I mean, even before then I started educating myself on stuff, but it was really hard because I grew up in a family that wasn't really like, you know, here's your culture or your heritage, or let's learn more about this. Like, it wasn't like that at all. I didn't know anything about my Black side. I did one of those DNA tests, and then it was really cool to find out, like, you know, what percentage of Nigerian, what percentage of Sierra Leonean, stuff like that. That was really cool to actually see it all there. It was all European and then all African. And there was like nothing, like, I thought there'd be a little bit of this or this. No, it was just straight up all that. And I was like, wow. But that was really neat to see. But, you know, before that and growing up, like, I always felt weird, like I didn't totally belong. You know, most of my friends or my family are white, so they wouldn't quite identify or understand with certain things that would happen. You know, even job interviews. You know, like if my resume is sitting next to someone with a very, you know, Ashley Smith or whatever, you know, they're gonna look at mine and be like, oh, Nakisha, what? Like, what is this name? You know, I would get comments on that all the time. And this happened a lot too. People not trying to say my name properly. I'd be like, oh, my name's Nakisha. They're like, oh, Natasha, blah, blah. I'm like, no, Nakisha. They're like, oh, Natisha. No, Nakisha. And I would constantly, it still happens, but like constantly correcting them. And they're like, can I just call you Nikki? And it's like, oh, because you're too lazy.
No, my name is Nakisha.
Yeah, that happens. So, oh, I'm just going to call you this. And I'm like, oh, that's not what I said, but okay. Like, that happens so much there. Oh, just drives me nuts. Yeah. Stuff like that, though, I don't let slide now. But I guess I kind of did growing up when I was younger, and it's very conflicting for me.
I imagine that it had to be difficult too, because it's like you didn't grow up in a Black household. So it's not like you had anyone to stand up for you that understood you there either.
Right.
Like, you didn't have anywhere to go where you had like someone to like really truly understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I really didn't. Yeah, that was that was really hard. It was actually one of my exes. That sounds so bad. One of my exes, but really it was an ex that kind of brought things more to light for me. Like I was asking him about stuff. I was asking him about just regular movies that like everyone's like Grease and like I don't know. And I would ask him about like, have you seen this? Have you seen that? You know, and he's like, does it have Black people in it? And I was like, well, and I would think about it. I'm like, well, no. And he's like, then no, I haven't. And I'm like, wait, what? And finally we talked and stuff, and he was just like, oh yeah, he's like, I don't really watch movies if there isn't like a Black like leading role. And he's like, I'm not talking about like the Black person being like the doorman in it. He's
Right.
like, no, like a service person. He's like, no, like a leading role, like a Black cast. And I was like, wow, like I thought that was actually pretty cool. And that's when I really started getting into like, okay, I have a duty to like learn about this stuff. Obviously, you know, my family, my educators didn't really teach me about this. It's my responsibility now to like look into this. But he was kind of the one to bring that to my attention. Like, oh yeah, like I don't, you know, I listen to mainly Black music. I support Black business. You know, he was like, he was just all about like supporting the Black community. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
So he actually really had a lot of influence on that and me like, you know, discovering that. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's so cool. Yeah. That reminds me of like one of the other people that I follow. Her name is Sheila Marie, on Instagram. I don't know if you've heard of her. Um, she does it's called the Unruly Retreat, and then she has Curly, Conscious, and Confident. Curvy, curly,
Ew.
conscious. Curvy, curly, conscious. And it's like a women's retreat thing. It's so good,
I
but
love it.
yeah, she actually like talked about the movie thing, you know, because one of the things, because she's was in theater and stuff like that, and she had like, I don't know, it was on her stories, whatever. She was also talking about like leading roles of Black people, that she wanted to see more of them not being in victim roles all the time.
Yes.
Like, they're not always drug addicts, they're not always deadbeat dads, they're not always whatever, you know, like it could be this empowering leading lady or whatever that like is an entrepreneur and owns her own, you know, and she talks a lot about how like as there's more like Black roles, it's always like in a negative view still a lot of times. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. And then the other thing she brought up that really like, it's actually in her podcast like recently in the last couple of days that she's brought up is she's had a lot of like white women kind of like come after her because like she only does retreats for Black women and she doesn't allow white women in her retreat, you know, and she
Wow.
had this whole discussion of how like entitled it is that like white women even feel they have the right to be in that space, because Black women need spaces that are representative of them and like all of this stuff. So it's like she's very good for me as a white woman to just like hear a perspective that I don't hear ever, because it's like when, you know what I mean, except maybe from like you, but it's like in Utah there's just like not a lot of opportunity for that to happen. You have to really seek it out, you know.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm
And
grateful
there's a
for
lot of
other
entitlement there. I
yeah.
feel like for sure.
And
Mhm.
I'm sure that I have also been entitled when I was younger as well. So like I'm super grateful for people like her who like come out and like have these discussions, because it's like, oh shit, you know, like I don't know. It's really interesting how entitled people can be for sure. Um but yeah, I just thought I'd bring her up too because I wanted to, just because like the movie, she talks about that a lot. Just like the kinds of roles that people play.
Yeah, it was something I never really noticed because yeah, growing up, I never even thought, you know, twice about that or whatever. And I'm sitting here watching, I mean, most of my collection, most of my like music and stuff. Yeah, like it was, you know, white people. And I didn't really realize that some of these, I mean, there weren't any Black people in the movie. And
Yeah.
I think I was asking him about Greece. Yeah. And then Tor was kind of the same way. Like when we were discussing something one time, and I don't know, there was like I think it was Grease actually, because I like own it. But yeah, I was talking about Grease or whatever, and he's just like, yeah, I don't really like get down with movies like that. He's like, I've never cared to see it or anything, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, what is there really for him to like relate to when it comes to that? I mean, not I can see how not a lot of us would, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, growing up in Utah, it was really interesting because I mean, I remember being in high school and I was one of the few, you know, Black kids in, I would be one of the few in the whole school. I was going to say in my class, but usually I was the only one in my class. And usually out of the whole school, it'd be a few people. I do feel like things are mixing and mingling a little bit more in Utah right now. But I mean, still, like it's definitely something that you notice. You just notice that here. And then I come out here and like our license plates, people will see Utah and they're like, what? This one guy at the gas station, he's like, I went out to Utah. He's like, ain't no brothers out there. And I was like, I know, yeah. Yeah, it's and people think that because I'm whitewashed. That's what I used to always be called growing up. Oh, Nakisha, she's whitewashed. Isn't that so fucked up?
What is that?
But
Yeah, I've never heard that term.
really, that's
Mm-mm.
always what they called me. My own friends would call me whitewashed. But yeah, it's yeah, definitely a term. I've been called it a lot. And so growing up in Utah was really hard because it was like I wasn't part of any kind of like Black community, and then I also wasn't really a part of, you know, the white community that I was growing up with, that I was always around, that my family is even, you know. um and it's hard too because I even have people within my own family who have some racist views, and I don't deal with it. Like I don't, that's just something hard pass, like I cannot with you. But so obviously, like growing up, there's been kind of some, I've been working through it, but you know, even my therapist asked me kind of recently, like, how do you feel about being biracial? And I just started bawling, and I had no idea that I even felt some type of way about it. And she was saying, she was like, you know, a lot of my clients, like I'll notice that they'll a lot of the biracial ones, you know, mixed ones, whatever, if you're like you don't feel completely accepted by the white community, you also don't feel completely accepted by the Black community. And I noticed that when we moved to Maryland, that was such a huge difference from living in Utah, huge.
Sure.
And yeah, I remember I had a boyfriend when I was out there, and he was Black, and we would be walking at the mall, through the mall or whatever, and Black women sometimes would come up to me and like, quit taking our men, and like yelling at me and get all upset with me and stuff. And there was when I worked there one time, I worked at Kmart, I was a cashier, but one time this couple came up and accused me of being racist because I wouldn't help them or whatever. They're like, you're racist, you're racist. I'm like, I'm half Black, what? Like we were closing and they told me to close my register down, and they got so upset with me. And it wasn't like they were standing right there and I'm like, no, we're closed. Like, you know, I had closed down my register and I was walking away as they were like yelling at me. But so it's been interesting. I've definitely had really interesting experiences in different places. But in Utah, I noticed specifically that, yeah, there's like, it's in a non-aggressive way, it's in a very passive way, but it's these constant microaggressions, constant, which I, to the point where it makes it kind of easier to accept and not as noticeable, I guess. So there were so many that I grew up with that I didn't even realize. I'm like, now today I'd be like, fuck you if someone said that to me or did that or whatever, you know. But back then I didn't really know any better. I was taught that that was okay. The majority of people around me were just like, no, I can come up and touch your hair whenever I want. I can call you whitewashed, and you know, that's that's fine. It's not a form of disrespect. I can totally do that to you, and I can, say the N word around you, and it doesn't matter because you're whitewashed. And like, I mean, there was all kinds of stuff growing up.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine, literally only imagine.
Yeah. Also, dating Tor also opened my eyes to that too, when we were looking for a place to move into together.
Mhm.
And I do this too when we're renting Airbnbs or anything where it's like us together, but it has to do with like our profiles, like they're going to look at our picture or whatever. We usually use my profile
Mm.
instead of his, because I noticed that when we would use his, or like we would go to look at a place and be like, okay, send over a picture of your ID. That's normally how they did that. And then we could go and they would give us the code or whatever. We could go look at the house or whatever that we wanted to rent.
Mhm.
Once we would send over his ID, they would ghost us. And it happened to us like quite a few times in a row. I'd say maybe like 5 times total or whatever. And then finally I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna send mine. And whenever I sent mine, it always went through. That never happened
Mm.
to us. So even just like noticing with that, that was kind of a hard realization to have happen. But
Yeah. It's
yeah.
really crazy too, because it's like, I think in Salt Lake, like in the city, it's much better now. But like the suburbs are like where it's the worst, which is where we grew up. But
Yeah.
like me and my ex-husband, we had a house out in Harriman, and
Yeah.
we like rented it out to we ended up leaving for a myriad of reasons. I hated the people, like it was so bad. And like I fit in like socioeconomically, like race-wise, so I can't even imagine otherwise. Um, but one of our first renters, it was a man and woman, and they had just gotten together and they each had their own kids. And she had a biracial child with her ex. And so then it was a family. She had one biracial child and like 2 white kids, and he had 2 white kids. So there's 5 kids, and one's biracial, and then 2 white parents. And they all live together in this house or whatever. And me and my ex would get, like, I think twice it happened, we got like a call from HOA because this kid was going to the pool, which he lives there, like he had the key to this pool. And it was like, who is this person, who is this, whose kid is this, he shouldn't be here, like he's breaking in. And he was probably, I think he was maybe 14.
That breaks my
Like,
heart.
yeah. And it was just like, we got so pissed at the HOA, and we would like argue it or whatever. And it's like, you guys have got to stop. Like it was really bad. And it's like, that's just from, like that's a peripheral. And I'm just thinking like this poor kid, you know what I mean? Like his brothers and sisters, biological brothers and sisters are in the pool with him. And he's getting singled out in front of like all of these people and all of his friends. And, because he's black or half black or whatever. And it's like, I just think I can't even imagine, because it's like at that age, you're already, you're like humiliated to be alive because you're 14.
Yeah.
And so I can't even imagine like having to deal with being called out and pulled out of like your pool in front of your friends, and like, I don't know, like, and just humiliated and harassed by adults.
Things like, I actually feel that like in my core, because my stepdad had 3 kids. I had my 3 step siblings are white. And then my half brother and half sister, on my mom's side, they're both white. Blonde hair, blue eyes and stuff. Like, we don't look like, my mom, green eyes, blonde hair. Well, probably green hair now, I don't even know. But she dyes it all the time. But yeah, like, I just, and then there was just me like out in the mix, and no one ever had any idea that I was their sibling, that I like belonged to that. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. It was so hard. But it's also my stepdad that has a lot of these racist views. So there's there's also that, which came into play later on. But at the time, when I was young, didn't really realize what was going on. But energetically, like at an energetic level, there's going to be that shame there, right? There's always this feeling of I'm different. People don't think I belong here. Like I don't belong here. I don't fit in. And that was always the theme. But I remember I would go to like birthday parties, and some of the other parents would be concerned, like, who's this Black girl, and it'd be all like, well, I had a lot of LDS friends growing up. So it would be like a certain demographic, and they were all very much alike. And then me, and I was always way different. I was always the different one, and I didn't grow up in their religion. I didn't grow up, I'm not their race. I'm not. And so, there were quite a few times that similar type of things had happened to me. And it just, so when you were telling me that story about the boy, I'm like, oh, that like breaks my heart, because stuff like that affects you, even getting older. Like it affects you. I remember stuff like that.
It's just your existence is always in question, and that's gotta weigh on you more than like I can even imagine.
I've been wanting to write a book, as you know, that involves some of my experience with this, involves finding my dad's side of the family and things like that. But part of it, there's a part that I just started like writing down, kind of like, well, there will be like journal entries kind of taken from my journals into this, that I plug into this book, or kind of my thoughts. But there was one that I was reading back through, and it was talking about being biracial is like, I feel like I constantly have to defend my own existence. And I felt like that for so long. And it's something that I've definitely had to work through. Even now, like I still get choked up, like there's a pain there. But yeah, it's like I have to deny my own existence to like fit in, or I have to like defend myself just for even existing. And feeling that way is so shitty. It is so shitty. But I think there's a lot of people out there that can identify, especially with biracial, people. But yeah, I think that growing up in America, Black or biracial is already difficult. But yeah, growing up in Utah, especially, like just added a whole different like layer to that. I feel like.
Yeah, we're just a bunch of passive aggressive people here.
Very passive aggressive. That is very much the style there.
That's why the drivers are such terrible drivers.
Oh my God, that's so bad. It's so bad. It's like, just make a decision. Like, if you don't want to let me in, and like, then just don't, but just keep driving, like do something. Oh my God, I would get so mad. And then there was that one year, I think it's 2019 or something, that Utah was voted like the worst drivers out of all the states. And no one even argued it. We're just like, yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically how it is. But do you remember there was this whole movement that happened about like, well, Black women, especially women of color, were not moving, like when they're on the sidewalk, just walking straight. Other people are just walking too, right? And they would just walk straight, not into anyone, not like, giving everyone their personal space and stuff, but just keep walking along the path that you're on. And so many people, they would run into so many people because they would automatically expect, especially if it was like an older white male, would automatically expect you to move for them. And I was like, what? I want to try this out. I want to, but I don't. And I didn't want to. But yeah, so I started experimenting with it, and I would go to work, and we parked in this garage where like I would come out on the sidewalk, and I would only have it was a short stretch of sidewalk that I would walk to get into the office. But I tried that out, and there were so many times that I would like bump into these men. Usually it was like businessmen, because it was like 9 a.m. when this was happening. So it was like businessmen like walking to work mostly. But oh my gosh, yeah, it really opened my eyes there too. I was like, wow, they all just like completely expected me to just run into the road basically, so that they could walk past. It was so crazy. And I would just keep walking straight and just, and they'd be like, excuse you. And they get so mad at me and stuff. And it's like, oh, like I was just walking straight. I don't know what you were doing, but yeah, that was really interesting to try that out, that experiment out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that opened my eyes to a lot of things as well. But it's stuff that you don't really think about,
Yeah.
Utah, they think like, oh, out of sight, out of mind, like, oh no, racism isn't still around. I can't believe it's still around. Like, because they're in their bubble, the Utah bubble, right? We talk about that all the time. Like, just no sense of other like cultures or races or personality. Like, it's just not designed for people to be different or unique there. Everyone's very much the same. Like, big large groups, I feel like, are designed, what's the word I'm looking for, encouraged to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like, would you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely would. And I feel so embarrassed saying this, but I clearly didn't have to deal with that. So I was just like super unaware. I didn't know any different. And so it's like, I think until I dated Muhammad in my early 20s, that I think I was even like 20 years old at that point. And it's like, I didn't, and he kind of pointed out things to me. He was someone who, like, your ex or whatever, triggered some things, some changes for you. Like, he triggered some for me because he came out with my family to go like four-wheeling, and there was like these friends of friends, and it was their kids were like on their four-wheeler. So like pretty distant off people, like had Confederate flags and stuff, Me growing up here, like, I guess I just like it's around, right? Like Confederate flags in Utah are a big thing. They're everywhere. And
it's big out here too. South Carolina, North Carolina too. Huge.
And I just like, I didn't think about it for me because it's like I'd never felt unsafe. I never had to feel unsafe. It's like I'm a white middle class kid. Like, of course, I just whatever, And so I was embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to say that, but then it's like he grew up somewhere, and he was of a different religion, and he wasn't from there, and he had an accent and all this stuff, and he felt very, very unsafe, and he asked to leave, and I was like, wait, what? And he was like, I don't feel safe here. And I was like, wait, like what? It like blew my mind because like I'd never had to like think about it. And like there's this person that at the time I like loved, and I was like, okay, well, like we'll leave immediately, of course, And it took a lot of like work because like I don't have to experience any of that just like throughout my day. So it's like, but it was just really interesting. It's all been peripheral. Like I've seen things happen to you and tour, like when we were in Hawaii, and like, yeah, to like him, and it's just like crazy. And that kid that I rented the house to or whatever, but it's just, yeah, I think that you can hear there's definitely a bubble that if you don't actively get out of that bubble, like there's a lot of people that stay in it for their whole life here.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing too, because like in social work or whatever, I've worked in different drug rehab centers and stuff like that. And it's like, there is a huge white supremacist group here with like swastika tattoos, white pride tattoos across their like entire chest. Like it's a really big thing here. And people want to say like it's not, but
it doesn't exist. It doesn't.
I've worked with these people before, so it's like I'm like I know they're here, and so it's very different because it's like I don't even know what the equivalent of that would be for a white person. You don't have that fear.
You don't feel that way. Yeah,
No.
especially like a white male. Like, what are you going to be afraid of? But even as a white female, like there's a lot of fears that are kind of taken off of the plate for you, And I think just in recognizing that is so important, acknowledging that, which a lot of people don't seem to do there. But and that's why I was just like, I gotta get out. Like we moved because I was just like, I cannot raise my daughter in this kind of environment. I don't want her growing up feeling the same way that I felt. I don't want her feeling like her tan skin or her curly hair or her thick hips or whatever, the way she speaks isn't black enough, or like I don't want her to end up feeling that any type of way like that, because yeah, she's absolutely beautiful and perfect, and she doesn't need to defend her own existence ever. I don't ever want her to feel that way. But yeah, people don't really realize it's very much still real. It's very much still apparent, how I was telling you, even there's things that I think of that, I'm with my white family sometimes and we'll pull up in a small town because I love to travel. I love to go on road trips and whatever. We'll go to a small town and they're just like, oh yeah, there's a bathroom in the gas station. Well, I have to automatically think like, what kind of town is this? Are they racist here? Like, am I allowed? I automatically go there. My family that I'm with a lot of the time, or like my friends or whatever, they don't even have that thought. They're just like, oh, I have to pee, move out of my way, I gotta pee. And for me, it's like, I'll hold it if it's too much. And even Tor and I, we go on road trips and stuff, and we'll see Confederate flag, like one after another on the highway, like in certain areas in South Carolina and stuff. And I'll be like, I have to pee, but don't pull over here. Like, we'll just keep going to the next town or whatever. He's like, okay, yeah. We have to think about stuff like that. And it's so automatic sometimes with like certain things, but it's stuff that a lot of other people don't really, or a lot of other people in my life didn't identify with or understand growing up. They didn't, realize that if I'm going in for a job interview, or if I'm dropping off my resume somewhere, then like, yeah, I have to worry about like, oh, when they see my name, they're going to automatically assume like, what is she? I've had people flat out ask me that too. What are you? I'm a human, like, and just the fact that they have the gall to do that, they think that they have the right to just, well, what are you even? Or, and it's just like, what the fuck, dude? But yeah, I've had just so many experiences when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, even just going to like, hey, we want to do a cabin trip on Airbnb, and it's like, okay, let's use your profile instead of mine, so we don't use Tor's profile based off of the shade of skin tone. It's just so it's so disgusting, but it's still very prevalent, very much. Yeah.
I think that's insane. Like, I think too, like I said about that Sheila Marie, and I'm so grateful that like, she's out there and like doing these like group things with just Black women. And it's like, part of that is like, I can, like, we've talked about this stuff. Obviously, this podcast is not the first time we've had these conversations. And like, I can be the most understanding person in the whole world, and I'll still never quite understand, like I'll never have experienced that. And so it's like, I think it's so important to have those spaces where you can be with other women that have had those experiences, so that, it's a whole other level of healing that can't happen outside of those spaces.
For sure. Yeah, I totally agree. Do you know who's the older woman? She's like an older white woman. She's got the big glasses. Oh, what is her name? She's like a huge activist.
Who doesn't believe in race? Is that one?
Yeah, I think so. Well, does she not? I thought she always like spoke. I've seen like some of her videos and stuff. I was following for a while. I want to say her name was like Rose, but I could totally be making that up. I can't remember. I didn't write her down. But yeah, she talks about how, I guess there's not race. She talks about how like we're all from the same people, but it's just like the ones that moved over here to this climate, the ones that moved over here to this climate.
I feel like, she's like not invalidating like Black people, but she's basically telling like white people, like, you came from Black people, so what's your problem, kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually really liked some of her videos. I really liked her a lot at first. But I can't remember. And then yeah, it started becoming like controversial. But at first I didn't realize. I was like, wow, she's like, I didn't realize that her message was like controversial in that way. For a long time. It kind of took me a while. And then once I started learning more about, like, yeah, Black history and just things that have happened, and history is being erased and stuff like that, I was just kind of like, oh, that's kind of a privileged way to look at it though. So you have to be careful with that. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of that out there. It's really hard. I think one of the best ways is just to literally give space to the Black people in your lives. Let them tell their stories and share their stories, and try to come to an understanding, and like sincerely, genuinely listen. And although you might not completely understand or identify with it, just holding that space for them is very valuable.
Yeah.
That's really important. And educating yourself as well. And I feel like I'm still kind of in the stage of educating myself. There's still more that I could learn for sure.
Yeah, I actually feel like I got slapped in the face a couple times just like in the last month because Amanda Seales, I don't know if you know who she is, but she's like a comedian and actress, and she wrote a book called Small Doses, and I was listening to that. And there's a whole chapter on like race and stuff in there, and that was really like interesting as well. So like I just listened to that book, and I wanted to bring it up because I think like for anyone, it's a really good listen, or read if you want to read it. I listened to it on Audible, and it was so good, and it had so many like really interesting points on how to handle situations for anyone, when it comes to race. So it was really, really interesting. And then as far as like educating too, another thing was like the podcast 1619. It's like a short series done by the New York Times. And 1619 is when slavery started. In the colonies, it was like that was when the first boat came over with 20 enslaved Black people, and that was how the trade started for like human trade.
Wow.
And it was really so informative about like the actual history of like Black people in the colonies and then in America, and then like how that transmuted into like what it is today, clear up into like farming and how it like affects. And it's just like little things I didn't even think of, but it's like, man, like slaves, aka like Black people, were the stewards of the land. Like white people weren't farming. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like they're the farmers, they're the ones taking care of our actual land and growing things and taking care of Mother Earth and like the
But then they couldn't
stewards.
own it. They couldn't
Well,
own the land, but they farmed it.
well, and that was like part of what they talk about too, was like after like the slaves like were emancipated and stuff, and then like then white people had to start like doing their own like land stuff. But then the problem comes in that it's like banks would give only white people like the money to like have
Yes.
get their farms and stuff. So then it's like, yeah, it's just a really great like short series about it that I think was like so historically informative. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up too, because that one really, I felt that one was like really, really great for actual like historical facts and stuff. So it's called
Cool.
1619, and I know it's on Spotify, and it's like a short, I think it's maybe like 5 episodes. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. So I just wanted to
Nice. I
throw
want
that
to
in
check that
there.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, because I love
What else?
history stuff, but
I know you have a lot of good resources and things. So yeah, you're more the one that like has specific people that you follow or podcasts or whatever. And me, I'm like, I don't know. I'll talk about my experiences. I definitely like follow, Black artists and try to support Black community and businesses, but I didn't have like specific things to really jot down or talk about when it came to that. So yeah, I think that's really cool. I definitely want to check out that podcast. I was wanting to ask you, who are some of your like favorite Black artists too?
Just like, I know when you say artists, I automatically think of like musicians,
Yeah, I do too.
right?
Yeah.
Where I'm just,
Which,
I mean, that's like the one I go to the most. Like, I don't really
yeah.
like buy paintings or anything like that, unfortunately, but I'm also just like really bad with names, right? There's like,
I am too.
I know,
Celebrity names. I am too.
I know.
I
I
mean,
know,
Michael
like,
Jackson, Janet Jackson.
I'm like Beyonce, obviously, right?
She paved the way for a lot of music. Yeah, she
I
had
think of
definitely
the
huge
first person I
influence.
think of is like Tina Turner.
I think a lot of people would. I don't, because I just never was, into her when I was into, like, when I was younger and stuff. I didn't grow up in a household that like listened to her or anything. So,
Oh my
but
gosh. I love
she paved
like
the way.
just as like, yeah, like obviously a Black woman, but even just as a woman, like just her embodiment of feminine, the divine empowered feminine to me is like wild. I just love it so much. Yeah, so I think of her a lot too. That's so hard. And then like even younger people like Willow, I'm just like obsessed with Willow.
I
I
love
can't. I
Willow
just, yeah, I love everything she says.
Smith. She's amazing, and I always forget. I'm like, what? She's only like this old. I don't know how old she is now, like 19 or whatever. But back when she was like making music at like 15, I was obsessed. She had this like very soulful vibe too, even back then. I was just like, what is happening? She like transformed my soul. But yeah, I love her influence. I've got to say, like Lauryn Hill, Erykah Badu.
Mm,
I thought of Whitney Houston, although I haven't listened to a lot of, I didn't really grow up listening to a lot of Whitney Houston, but I know that she really was a big influence for a lot of people.
mm.
Um, but I think of like TLC.
Oh
Um,
yes,
oh, I loved
TLC.
my girls. I loved
Yeah.
my girls in TLC. Aaliyah,
Mm,
I was like obsessed with Aaliyah. Um, Missy
Miss, I was
Elliott.
just gonna say Missy Elliott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, love her. Um, but yeah, I think it's really important to celebrate like Black entertainment, Black music, Black movies. There's because a lot, especially because I feel like in Black culture, a lot of our music and dance has been kind of like taken from us in a sense.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind
Just
of. I
straight
mean,
taken.
it has been. It's been taken. Our style, our whatever, like all kinds of stuff that we have, and it's taken. And it's like, oh, I like this and this here. It's kind of picked apart. Like, oh, I like this. I like this over here and like this over here. But like you as a race, like stay over there. And it's kind of like, what
Mhm.
the fuck? Like, so we're not, appreciated and valued in these certain ways, but these other things are our hairstyles are,
Mhm.
are the clothes we wear, and the music, and the music that we dance to, and getting the fake booty, the booty implants and stuff. Our bodies are it's so funny. And there's been so many times that people haven't been attracted to me or let me know that they're not attracted to me because I have curly hair, or I have these thick hips, or I have like a curvier build and stuff. But
Mm.
then there's like plastic surgeons out there, like in a certain, like a very specific, like, yeah, I do booty implants like all day, every day, because this is what's popular. So I think that it's very important for for the culture to be celebrated,
Mhm.
instead of stolen all the time.
Appropriated, stolen, straight. Yeah.
Yeah, just straight up, like, yeah,
Forever. I know, because I grew
that's
up on
another
like,
thing I have a hard time with.
yeah, I grew up on Elvis, and I loved Elvis when I was younger all the time. And so I know, super random. And I think I was like in my 20s when I had the realization that like all of his music was stolen. And I even went to like Graceland. And one of the things they even say on the tour is like, oh, like he moved into the like ghetto area so that he could be closer to like Black music or whatever. And I was like,
Wow.
this sucks. Like yeah, like it just blows my mind, you know. And at the same time, like
Wow.
I'm sure in those, you know, Black artists were trying to make music and probably famous and not even making money off of it, or like having someone like him steal their music, or
Yeah.
and that's not even that long ago either, you
No.
know. And so I hope it's getting better, and I hope that people are learning. um that Amanda Seales book Small Doses talks a lot about the difference between appreciation and appropriation, and that's really helpful for me. Like I've been confused about it before, or like tried
Yeah.
to teach myself, because it's like, hey, like I've always wanted to get braids or wanted to do something like, you know, and it's like, like, can I, should I, like, when I was younger, it didn't question, like, I did feel entitled to it. Like, oh, I can do whatever I want to do or whatever. It was very, you know, younger as in like a teen. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was really helpful in that book to have her talk about those types of things for sure.
That's
Um,
nice. Yeah.
yeah. And just like having, and I think it's like as a white person, it's our responsibility to seek out that information. And it's not your responsibility to have to walk around teaching everyone just because you were born
Mm-hmm.
Black, you know? And I think that's another thing that people need to check themselves on.
It gets so exhausting. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was recently having to like explain to someone very close to me why it was like such a big deal that this law was passed. I forgot what the actual name of it is, but so that people aren't discriminated at work against their hairstyles. Like,
Oh, yeah. Like the
yeah,
Crown Act,
yeah,
I
I
think.
think so. Yeah. And
Yeah.
this was passed to protect people so that they can wear their braids or their dreads to work or whatever, and they're not discriminated against. And I had someone very close to me, very dear to me, like, well, I don't even see why that's a thing. Like, I don't, you know, and just like totally, completely like did not understand. I'm like, the fact that this even needs to be made into like, this even needs to be passed, this even needs to be a conversation is a problem. Like, don't you see how this is like not okay?
Mhm.
But yeah, just all kinds of things like that. But it's really important to have these kind of conversations because there's people out there that genuinely don't know, that want to know.
Mhm.
There's other people out there that don't give a shit, and I'm not talking about them. I don't care about them. But like, there's people out there
Yeah.
that like just genuinely don't know, and they want to. They don't mean to come off insensitive. They don't know that it's insensitive or, you know, appropriation, or they don't realize. um but it is your duty to educate yourself, especially if you have a person of color in your family or immediate environment,
Mm.
or, you know, because it's been mostly those kind of relationships that have probably affected me the most with their comments or their lack
Sure.
of, you know, understanding or respect or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the most important cue, is just, yeah, educating
Yeah.
yourself and not leaving it up to the people of color in your life to do that for you.
And oh my God, it's 2022. Like, if you can't educate yourself now, like you're helpless. You
Yeah,
have like
bro. Like,
every free resource in the world. Like, there's so many
so
resources
many.
out there, yeah, at your
So many.
fingertips. So it just annoys me. I'm just
Yeah.
getting annoyed, but it's fine. But you're right. There's people out there that have no desire to try.
Mhm. I did want to mention really quickly, because I have like all these notes that I didn't. There's actually a lot. There's a lot we could say on this episode for sure, and I'm realizing
Yeah.
that now. But I did want to bring up how, like, finding my dad's side of the family, realizing I'm related to Huey P. Newton, that was a huge thing that I'm feeling really connected to lately. I went right away, and because I remember learning about him in like history books and history class and stuff like that, but not a whole lot. I couldn't really connect, like, okay, like what's the importance of this? So I went to the library. There's documentaries on him that I was able to watch. But yeah, he's the co-founder of Black Panthers movement back in the 1960s. And with the Black Panthers, they got a lot of bad rep, as most of these kind of movements do. I feel like they get hijacked. And like Black Lives Matters, that whole movement, I feel like got really hijacked, as well as, yeah, especially the protest that happened in Utah. I was so disgusted with that. Like, yeah, like people had their own vendetta and stuff, and like taking a dump on the police car and stuff. I was like, that's not what this is about. Like, that's not what that was supposed to be about at all. But so yeah, but he was co-creator of the Black Panther Party, which is huge. And so I started learning more about like the Black Panthers, the original Black Panthers, and there's so many good things that came of that. So many activists that I even follow now, like Angela Davis. I really like her. But so they actually had some really good programs for the community. They had free health clinics for people of color. They also did the free breakfast program, so kids could have like a good breakfast before going to school. And they fed so many thousands and thousands of kids with this program. And it ended up being in 19 different cities, I believe, all across the states. So they did a lot of really good things. They had like some really cool programs and stuff that I feel like just get kind of swept under the rug, because there was also, they were made out to be these like rebels, and they were getting arrested, and, and stuff like that. But they did a lot of really good things for the communities, for sure. And so I just wanted to bring that up, shed some light. Maybe we'll put in the documentaries. I'll have to look them up, the specific documentaries that I got, but I believe I watched like 3 total on the Black Panthers and Huey P. Newton specifically. But that was really cool. So to know that I'm like a second cousin of his, I'm like, hey, cuz, it's just kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that's been a big part of my journey now. Like my healing journey is connecting to that, and to like my ancestors, doing ancestral healing and like the yoni baths and things like that, just kind of working with like my womb and ancestors and the messages that I received through them. So that's been cool. And then as far as like one of my favorite artists, I did want to bring up Childish Gambino. I love him.
Yes.
His real name's Donald
Daniel.
Glover.
Yeah.
Daniel.
I was going to say Daniel Glover, but it is Donald. Oh my God.
He is so talented. Like I first saw his comedy skit, and I thought that was so funny. It was making me laugh. And then music, and I love his music. And then he produces shows, and he's an actor and in these TV shows and stuff. Like he's like one of my faves right now. He has been for a little while now, but love him. So I did want to mention him in this episode as well.
He's insanely talented.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Me
really
and Dallin talk about him all the time.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I'm just like, he's one of those people where you're like, what am I doing with my life? Like,
he is. Yeah.
I don't even know how you do all of those things.
Yeah, you would think like, oh, he does stand-up comedy too, though. Oh, I bet it's not that great though, because like he's mostly focusing on music. Like, no, he's hilarious. Like, it was so good. And then like his music is good, and then he'll come out with a show and it's like amazing. And then I don't know,
and his acting is just amazing too. He's like a 10 out of 10 on anything he does. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate him a lot. He's like one of my favorite artists.
Yeah. For sure. Epic.
Yeah.
Epic.
So, did you have any other mentions? I know that there's probably I have a bunch still.
I don't. I slipped mine in there, man, in the first bit. But yeah, if you want to keep like, I don't know if you want to keep going and like talk about the rest of the stuff.
The only other thing, which this is totally out of place now, but
It's a good transition.
maybe I can talk about it more on the jobs episode if we do the jobs episode. But another thing, living in Utah, working in Utah, my many jobs that I've had, but I've always been labeled the angry Black woman.
Oh,
Always.
yeah.
And that was one of our huge reasons for moving out of Utah, because I just, even Tor would see it, you know, like he would like witness that and stuff. And he was just like, you need to get out of this little like, you know, bubble where everyone's like the same and stuff like that. Cause yeah, it would be so crazy. Like I would just express like an opinion or something like an idea or whatever. And it would just be like, whoa, calm down or something, you know. And it's like, whoa, what? I'd be like reprimanded, I'd be punished, I would be like, yeah, I would end up being like, oh my gosh, what's the word? But outcast. And then, you know, my coworker over here could do whatever she wanted, you know, and just, you know, like, okay, Rachel, and she could just go whatever, take breaks whenever and abuse that and steal from them and whatever, you know. But like I was the problem, and that happened so much there, so much. That was one thing that I did want to bring up. And like I said, it's super random now because we're not even talking about anything to do with that. But that's another huge label. That's another huge thing that a lot of Black women have to like work through and heal from. And I know it's been something that has come up for me so much that I've had to like really work through that as well. But yeah, always being seen as the angry Black woman, always. And that is very real. I know you hear about that and like in Utah, they're like, oh, whatever. Like, it's just like, but that stereotype is for real, for sure.
We did talk about it outside of job stuff because I remember I was reading something about statistics in Black women, and it was saying in like New York or something, it was like Black women were like 3 times more likely to die in childbirth still, like now. And they like sociologists came in and stuff like that and were like really studying it. And basically it came down to that they would say that you're hysterical. Like if you were in pain or something was wrong and you said it and you were like, hey, I think something's wrong. It's like, oh, you're just being hysterical. You're just being illogical. And they would trust you, like doctors would trust you less than they would trust like a white woman. And so we've talked about it in that like they use the word hysteria or like hysterical a lot. Oh, like wow, Black women are just hysterical. And it was like a really interesting like thing because it was a research done, I think maybe in the last 5 years even. It was really recent. And I was like 3 times more likely to die in childbirth. Like that's insane. That's not okay.
No, I've looked into this like separately. And because it's such a huge deal. And it's prominent today. This isn't 50 years ago, 80 years. No, it's today happening. And it's definitely influenced my experiences of like, when I have to go to the hospital or the doctor or whatever, that's something that's always on my mind as well. When giving birth to my daughter, that was a huge thing for me as well. But in that study, I remember it was like talking, or maybe the one that I researched, maybe it said it in the same one, but it also talks about how like, they wouldn't believe the Black woman was actually in pain. So they wouldn't take as many precautions to like comfort her or ease her. It was just like, oh, she can do this on her own. Like we have this whole like, we definitely have a strength about us. I get that. But at the same time, like it would just be taken advantage of or taken too far and just like, oh, like whatever, she's not really in that much pain. She's not really, but then they would like be able to comfort or cater to the white woman. I've seen this firsthand quite a few times in my medical experiences. There's a really good episode of Red Table Talk where Jada, Willow, and Grammy talk about this actually, and they have like experts on talking about this. But yeah, maybe if you want to like look into this more, because it is very huge deal.
We'll have to put that.
That episode was awesome. Yeah, we'll put that down in the comments. The
Yeah.
Red Table Talk episode.
We're gonna have so many resources at the bottom of this one.
Yeah, as we should. I'm glad that we do. So yeah. Thank you. So did you pull a card?
I haven't. Excuse me. I haven't yet, but I have the deck I want to use, which is the Starseed deck.
I love that one.
Ooh, I know. I felt so called to it lately.
Yeah, I really.
But we'll just have to put our energy into it too. Like, what do we want from this? Let's collect. Okay. Starkeeper. Cosmic Ancestor.
I just got really excited.
See the light by staying grounded. Ooh, the picture looks so cool. I hope we can.
Yay, I love your showing time. Yeah.
I know. I just peek over the. I'm all. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Starkeeper. Cosmic Ancestor. I already love it.
Yeah, same. I'm ready.
I'm so ready for this. Let's see here. Cosmic Ancestor, see the light by staying grounded. You're an ancient keeper of the stars, here to anchor and seed your light in your unique way. You've likely been incarnating on Earth for some time, dedicated to an era of awakening and bringing about a long-awaited shift in the planet's evolution. We are at a tipping point now. The survival of Earth and all its species is coming to a head. The more grounded you remain during this transitional period, the more helpful you'll be. The more you tend to the flames of your own heart, the more love you'll anchor on to this planet. The wisdom of the stars is imprinted in your soul. The more soul fragments you call home, the more this wisdom is seated here. You may be called to be in different places in the world to anchor this light, perhaps by taking a trip or living in a certain location. You may also find yourself experiencing awakening symptoms. The more grounded you remain, the more stable Earth's energy will become and the less reactive humanity will be. You are here for a double mission, to grow as an individual and as part of a larger collective that's bringing about a shift in frequency. Trust that you can be in the world, but not of it, and lead a truly glorious life. Place the card on the portal of your heart and whisper the following. I acknowledge that I'm a star keeper. I choose to anchor my light and stay as grounded as possible.
Wow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That one like blew me away. I teared up.
Oh.
That one made me tear up. It like, yeah, I'm like blown away. I loved that. I feel like I definitely needed to hear that message. Like,
that's huge. It's a huge one. And I think too, especially when you're talking about race and just like bringing about the whole entire shift of the planet's evolution and just how transitional periods and stuff, and that we're all here for that. I have to remember just to keep myself grounded sometimes too. Oh, that's super. Yeah. Soup's
I love
cute.
It. Soup's cute.
Yeah.
I know. I always do.
I know. Star Keeper. Yeah.
Nice.
So beautiful. As was our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all your stories too. And thanks to everyone else for showing up and holding this space as well and listening with an open heart. I really feel like our followers are so kind and compassionate. And I feel like we've been so lucky and gotten such great feedback. And that feels really good. So we appreciate you guys and appreciate your time. And don't forget to be wise
and get weird.